Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today here at Patient 360. We're going to go ahead and get started. I will be screen sharing with you our session. My name is Amanda Lord. We also have Team P360 joining us today, various members of the team that will be pulling into the session to chat with you. So I'm going to begin screen share in just a moment. Wonderful. So just very briefly, again, my name is Amanda Lord with Patient 360. Today we're going to be talking to you. This session is on QCDR reporting, and QCDR data submissions are the future of QPP reporting. So we're going to be talking to you today about Patient 360 as a QCDR. And before we get started, just want to make sure that everyone can see the beginning of the session all right and that my voice is loud and clear.
Sounds good, Amanda. Thank you.
Wonderful. So the first thing I like to do when we get these sessions started, because I know that your time is valuable, we've only got about an hour today and we've got a lot of information to cover. I want to always go back to the goals of the session. What do we want you to walk away with knowing? The first thing, and this is what I'm going to dive into initially, is a basic understanding of the QPP program and MIPS. Some of you may already have some information. Obviously, the website that QPP has put out, it's becoming more robust over time as they continue to build and evolve the program. But we're going to review some of that information with you. Just sometimes seeing it, hearing it, and seeing it again, it starts to finally sink in and you have those aha moments. So we do want you to walk off the call with an understanding of the overall QPP program and what MIPS is, because that you need to have that base foundation in order to understand how a QCDR actually works within the QPP program. So a QPP, the QPP program is the overarching program. The QCDR, what the QCDR does, how it functions, and its purpose, that falls under the umbrella of the QPP and MIPS program. So then we'll delve into, and Dr. Jorgensen will delve into how a QCDR works and why it can revolutionize the way your practice reports. And then towards the end, we're going to talk a bit more about QCDR reporting with P360. How does it improve patient outcomes, how it can save your practice money, the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of how to actually participate in the program and what your options are. So those are the three things that we want you to walk away from this call knowing, and I'll often bring it back to that while we're looking at different slides. I think everybody understands when we read this conceptually, okay, modernizing Medicare to provide better care and smarter spending. You know, we often have philosophical conversations about this internally as a team about the fact that anytime you have a program like this that's connected to a punitive, negative payment adjustment, it really kind of kills the spirit of the program. So we've got this new quality payment program that's been launched by CMS that's saying, we want to improve outcomes, we want to provide better care, smarter spending. Like, these are all, philosophically, these are good concepts. These are things that we want to honor the spirit of the program. But of course, it's tied to a payment adjustment, which can be really, really frustrating for folks. So what we try to do at Patient 360 is position things where we're helping you to uphold the spirit of the program, which is improve your outcomes, improve your clinical care, provide better care. And the byproduct is you're going to avoid the payment adjustment, which in and of itself is a good thing. Nobody wants to incur a payment adjustment. But the idea behind QCDR and what we're trying to do at Patient 360 is really focus on the outcomes first. And then once those are adjusted and things are improved, the byproduct is that you're automatically going to avoid that payment adjustment and as well potentially be able to obtain a bonus. So we do try to create that balance for you, but we're also pretty good at understanding from the provider perspective how frustrating it can be, because we are physician-owned and operated. So, and Doug will be speaking with us in a little bit. It's frustrating as a provider to have CMS say, you need to do this, this, and that, and it's felt very punitive over the years, right? Because we all know the program in the past, when it was PQRS and PQRI, was even more punitive. It was kind of tick off all these boxes, say that you did this, and it was basically reporting for reporting's sake. The quality payment program is trying to move away from that, but obviously it's still tied to a payment adjustment. And so we fall in the middle of navigating for you and helping you uphold the spirit of the program by creating QCDR measures that are really helpful to you, or that should be helpful to you, to be able to use to improve your outcomes, but then also as a byproduct avoiding that payment adjustment. So that's the push and pull that I always like to kind of position when we're starting off these sessions. We understand your pain and how frustrating it can be to have these payment adjustments in the first place, but if we try to look at the underlying spirit of the program, that can sometimes help, because if you're participating fully in the way that you need to, you'll end up avoiding the payment adjustment anyway. A couple of things, if you haven't looked at what's new under the QPP program yet compared to the PQRS program in the past. So those of you that are familiar, and I know there's a number of folks on the call today that have participated with P360 in the past as a regular registry. You may not have used us as a QCDR yet, but you have used us as a regular registry, which we are still a regular registry as well. We're a qualified registry and we're a QCDR. We're both. Today we're focusing more on what we do as a QCDR, but all the same capabilities that we've always had as a registry continue to exist under this new program. But what we call this is that there's a flexibility year that we call it the gift year from CMS. It's called Pick Your Pace. I'm sure many of you have seen it. It's really participating to the minimum to avoid payment adjustment. And I heard a beep, so I just want to make sure my voice is still loud and clear.
You're good, Amanda.
Great. These three programs in the past, many of you are familiar with Meaningful Use, Value-Based Modifier, and PQRS. These are married now into one under the QPP program. What that means for you when you're participating, either when you're submitting your measures via qualified registry or via a QCDR, you actually get to do all three programs, and I'll show you the categories in just a little bit. Meaningful Use has become ACI category. VBM is cost. There's also an improvement activities category. These are rolled into one, and you actually get to submit via one mechanism. So instead of having to run around and ping pong back and forth to all these different programs that used to be siloed, oh, I've got to submit Meaningful Use and a test via my EHR through this section of the CMS website. Oh, the value-based modifier comes after PQRS has already been rated. Like, it was all separated. It was a bit of a nightmare. Now you actually get to work with one registry, submit everything all via the registry, and get results via the registry. So the one mechanism definitely has helped clean things up, move things along a little bit quickly, we hope. Nothing's ever quick with the government, we know that, but we hope that some of these changes that they have made, and again, we're looking at this from the glass is half full. Of course, we know as a registry, and you know as providers, that we're working with the government. It's not perfect. There are still lots of glitches and things that are driving us bonkers just as much as you, but if we look at the glass is half full, there are some things that they've tried to do, some feedback that they've tried to take to make things less cumbersome for folks. So this is one of them. There is a new help desk and the QPP website. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. I'll make sure that you have the links for that. And those were also in the agenda that was sent to you prior to this call. As you all know, the stakes are higher for non-participation. So if you don't do anything at all, it is a downward 4% payment adjustment. In the past, under PQRS, it was 2%. And then depending on how you performed, there might have been an extra 2% downward payment adjustment under the value-based modifier, but it really depended on your performance with PQRS. Now it's just straight up, you must participate if you are eligible, and we'll talk about eligibility in just a few minutes and how you know if you're eligible or not. But if you're eligible, you must participate, or it's a negative 4% payment adjustment automatic. But the good thing is you can actually potentially gain a bonus if you participate and participate to the fullest as much as you can. So the good and the bad and the ugly we're giving you here with that. Test pace option is really easy, so that's the gift from CMS. And we'll show you that a little bit later as well. And that's called the QCDR MIPS for beginners. Very simple. You get to submit just one measure. You'll avoid the payment adjustment, and you'll learn how to actually submit for a QCDR measure. So here we go to that eligibility, because a lot of folks are like, I don't know, am I supposed to be doing this program or not? If you're participating because you want to avoid, because I'll position this two ways, with the spirit of the program, and then I just want to avoid the payment adjustment. If you want to just uphold the spirit of the program and learn more about outcomes and data and understand where your practice stands nationally, look at some benchmarks, start getting data in, payment adjustment really isn't something that's on your mind. Maybe you don't even see Medicare patients. There are folks that can do QCDR for the sake of doing QCDR to understand what they're doing, outcomes data, and Doug will talk a little bit more about that later. So for folks that are on this call that really just want to have a good tool to use with Patient 360, to have measures that apply to them and really look at their outcomes and try to make clinical improvement on certain things. For those of you that are on this call, Patient 360 is a great match. You're able to do that with us because we have that tool. For many others who are on this call, if you have found out that you're eligible, meaning that you must participate in MIPS for 2017 to avoid a payment adjustment because you're seeing Medicare patients, obviously then you're going to want to work with Patient 360 as a qualified registry or a QCDR to avoid that payment adjustment. So there's two different positions that you can take, either or we can work on that with you. You might say to us, look, we just want to submit data to learn more about our performance, how we're doing, to gauge outcomes. Then you can choose our measures and submit data with us and just use the Patient 360 tool for your own use. You can also use the Patient 360 tool. On behalf of Patient 360, we submit measures to CMS for you, and that's when you avoid the payment adjustment. So there's a couple of different options when you're working with Patient 360 as either a qualified registry or a QCDR. But this is how you know if you're eligible or not. And I do want to make you aware that there's a checker tool now. And if you don't know where to find this checker tool, this came out from CMS. It's actually on our website, so let me just block over there for you so you can see it. If you click here on our website, you can pop in your NPI number and do the actual NPI check. And so it makes it easy. If you put in your NPI, it's going to show you exactly exactly where you stand with your eligibility. So let's make Doug the guinea pig. Tamara, go with Doug's NPI. Doug, you're the guinea pig.
It is 104-321-6922.
And this is good for everyone to do, because I'm going to preface this, folks, by letting you know that when you do the checker to see if you're eligible for MIPS, this is coming directly with, this is how your information is entered into PAYCOS. It's with CMS. So if there's anything that comes up that's not right, this also helps you know how you're appearing with CMS. So I already know, because I've done this a couple of times, and Doug's in process of getting his stuff changed. You'll see he's a DO, but they have him listed. One more time, Tamara.
It is 104-321-6922.
So you'll see everybody here. He and I noticed this, and he's like, oh, I've got to get in contact with PAYCOS. But this is important for you all to do as well. Just check what your status and eligibility is, but at the same time, you can also check and see how you're listed, and if anything needs to be fixed, then you can contact CMS to let them know about that. And you can see here that while Dr. Jorgensen himself isn't necessarily eligible because he hasn't seen a lot of Medicare patients, his actual group, so the TIN with which he submits with, so he's at a practice with a number of other providers, they are eligible. So if you're reporting as a group, you will avoid the payment adjustment if you're eligible for it, if you're reporting as a group. So only one provider in the group. If one provider is eligible for the program and you report as a group, everybody avoids the payment adjustment, which is a great thing. So this is just a website to be aware of that Quality Payment Program released for us. If you don't feel like going directly to their link, you can access it from our actual website. So once again, I think it's important to kind of drill this in. We talked a little bit about the spirit of the program. In the past, it was all about just reporting for reporting's sake to avoid a payment adjustment. What they're trying to do now is modify your actual behavior. So they're really trying to look at improving clinical quality of care with reporting as the byproduct. This results in more optimal care. You're demonstrating that improvement in patient outcomes, and there's decreased costs. So this is the spirit of the program. And like I said, once this stuff is achieved, by default, you're going to avoid the payment adjustment anyway. And so it's important to try to look at the new programming from that point of view. One thing that we say at Patient 360 that can be very frustrating, and some of you may have experienced this, we fall under this bright sunshine light here. The QCDR and registry, clarity of data. I know I sound really excited about this stuff. It's not really that exciting, but we try to make it at least fun or slightly entertaining anyway. But the black hole of submission, we call it. So many of you in the past under the old PQRS program and the new MIPS program, these are still options. So you can still submit via claims, and a lot of people that are still on paper or really small groups are submitting by claims. It's craziness. Same thing with web interface and EHR submission. The issue with what we call the black hole of submission is, under the new program, is the whole point that you're submitting data is to actually understand in the actual reporting year in which you're submitting the data, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and what you need to improve on. So you actually have actionable items to improve these outcomes and uphold the spirit of the program. How can you uphold the spirit of the program, which is to change clinical quality of care, if you dump all your data this way and then don't hear about it until a year and a half later with results? Then what have you been able to improve within the reporting year? It doesn't even make any sense. What happens via these mechanisms is you submit the data to CMS to avoid the payment adjustment, but you have no idea of how you performed. There's no dashboard. There's nothing, no way to slice and dice your data to be able to understand what am I doing during the reporting year, how do I compare with my peers, how am I benchmarking, all that good stuff doesn't exist via these mechanisms. You'll avoid the payment adjustment, but you won't actually know how you did until a year and a half later. On top of that, it's not upholding the whole, well, I'm avoiding the payment adjustment, but if I'm not seeing how I'm doing, what is the point of submitting these ways? Another thing is web interface. I'm pretty sure you have to pick about, I'd say 15 to 25 measures. It's a very different model. And EHR submission, if you're using EHR measures, they only have about, for MIPS approval this year, I think 60 to 64 measures, somewhere around there. Whereas QCDR and registry, we have all of the registry measures available. It's somewhere close to 200 and upwards close to 300 measures that we have available for you to choose from. And so it's really important to think about these things when you're considering, well, I want to avoid the payment adjustment, yeah, but I also potentially would like to look at a bonus. And furthermore, I actually care about the data that I'm submitting and want to know how I'm performing, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what are actionable, tangible items that I can do to make improvements. It's tough to do that when you have limited measures, like with EHR, when you only have 64 to choose from, or when you're submitting in such a way that it just kind of goes into the vortex and you find out a year and a half later whether or not you avoided a payment adjustment. And maybe you're going to get that QRUR report, and if any of you have seen it, have fun with that. Have an advanced statistics degree to actually understand the QRUR report. And I like to consider my partner, Dr. Jorgensen, pretty bright. And when we look at the QRUR reports together, they're not fun. They're really hard to understand. The first couple of pages, there's a couple of graphs on them, and you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And then you start to dig in, and it just, how they benchmark it, the algorithms they use, not easy to understand. And you're getting it a year and a half later, so there's no way to impact change within the actual reporting year. It's maddening. And so this is where we're going to be providing you with that clarity that you need as you go, because we have a dashboard and we're doing real-time analytics for you. So Doug's going to talk a little bit more about what is the importance of a QCDR. So right now I've positioned things as, here's what the QPP, the Quality Payment Program, looks like. Here's what the Quality Payment Program is trying to do. And now you understand that we are a mechanism by which you can submit your measures to CMS, or by which you can simply capture your measures to understand how you're performing, either or. And now that you understand the Quality Payment Program, what Doug's going to do is talk more about now the actual QCDR itself, who should be participating in a QCDR and why, what's the purpose of it, why is it so important for outcomes. So with that, I'm going to let Doug get into which specialties we focus on for QCDR. And again, if you're not from one of these specialties or areas of focus, then you would be working with us as a regular registry. So with that, I'm just going to let Doug get started.
Thanks, Amanda. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you guys? Great. So thank you guys for joining us today. Amanda, thanks so much for that information. This can be a very frustrating and confusing topic. We've been doing this now for 10 years, and when I first got started, you only got paid bonus. You did not actually get penalized. And we've decided to focus our efforts over the last 2 years in the pain management and manual medicine worlds, because they are areas that are very near and dear to my heart and a lot of what I've been working on for the last 20 years clinically. And one of the big problems that I'm running into with what we're trying to find for the medical practices, when I look at the metrics, it's a bit of gamemanship. And like any game, if you know the rules, you can play the game better, and then you can play the game to win. I'm not a big participation trophy kind of guy. And if you know what the rules are and you know how to effectively implement the rules, you can win at whatever game you're playing, and this is really no different. So when you look at the quality metric program, and the QPP as it is morphed really is focused on primary care, general surgery, and some surgical subspecialties. They really left out some pretty important pieces, and I would argue with the opiate crisis going on around the U.S. and some of the other issues that are occurring relative to people in pain not getting treated, this is a pretty important field. So we tried to find metrics and write metrics that were very specific to the pain management world, and as a quality clinical data registry, we work with stewards who are folks who are not QCDRs but want to work with a QCDR to write measures that are germane to their specialty. And we can work with just about any organization, whether it's a state organization, a national organization, even a large practice. Those are perfectly legitimate groups. And we just write the metrics with you and then we submit them together to Medicare. So we've written very specific ones for pain management, looking particularly around risk mitigation strategies, but also what we've written is something around manipulative medicine, manual medicine, if you will. This is a field that is of growing importance and getting more attention because of the opiate issues nationally. And when we wrote these, I will say that initially I think some folks were kind of confused at Medicare. And we wrote some last year that were purely performance-based, but now the metrics have to have a little more teeth to them. They have to be what they consider high bar, meaning some people are going to fail them because they're not doing well. If everybody passes, the government is not happy because, one, they don't save money, and two, they don't think that the metric is challenging enough in order for it to be successful. Go to the next slide, please. Great. So in looking at the QCDR, these metrics that we've come up with are exclusive to Patient 360. They're specific to the specialties I described, and you can combine them with over 50 other MIPS measures. And we did that by intention so that when you are looking at what you want to report, you can report on the measures that we created specifically, and those are proprietary. So if you create them with us, they're proprietary to us and you. And then in addition, there are other metrics that are broad enough and general enough that you can be successful. This is important for a couple of reasons, and when Amanda goes over scoring, that'll make a little more sense to you. But we are trying to create standards and benchmarks, which I'll talk more about in just a second. And in order for that to happen, we need to look at what our particular specialty is reporting, what our peers are doing. So we have comparative analytics that are available. And that's going to be super important as you move forward because there's going to be a linear model of success in how reporting occurs. As I was saying earlier, because there are no participation trophies available in this whole process, when we're looking at what we're being analyzed against, we want to be able to know how we are doing day to day, week to week, definitely month to month, because there will come a time when we're getting payment adjustments quarterly. And it's even more important now because this is the first year that all the private payers are now included in this mix. It's not just Medicare patients. And I've had a lot of docs when Amanda and I have lectured on this topic around the country or done presentations like this. People always ask, well, why do you think the private payers are collecting our data? And I kind of laugh because I'm a pretty paranoid, cynical guy. I'm from New York, so my cynicism is rather high. I'm like, they're collecting the data because they're going to eventually use it against you. And they want to know how you are doing. And you need to be prepared, and we need to be prepared as a medical system to defend ourselves and prove that what we are doing is worthwhile. And in the manipulative medicine arena in particular, the data and the evidence for what we're doing is not always great. And we want to collect a body of evidence that we can use and show to the feds and to the privates, this stuff not only works, it saves money, it mitigates risk by cutting down on pharmaceutical use, and it allows us to prove that by using a system like ours. Next slide, please. So if we look at the customizable component of the measures, we're able to do this for manipulative medicine. We're doing this in the pain management and addiction recovery worlds for looking at urine drug screens and opiate agreements as part of what we did within our metrics that we submitted. And the benchmarks, because they're comparative against our peers, if you will, you can see how you're doing. And more interestingly is right now, we're creating what that benchmark is because this is the first year that these new metrics have come out because this is the first year we've had MIPS. Before it was PQRS, and the measures did not get moved forward as easily. The real-time feedback allows us to make the clinical changes that are necessary. At the end of the day, my brother has a very common saying whenever we present, and I always use this slide when I'm doing billing and coding talks, but the lecture slide typically says it's never the money, and then the next slide is, but it's always the money. Money's a motivator, and the feds are motivated by it, the private insurances are motivated by it, and even in nonprofit sectors, I was talking to a federally qualified health center medical director once, and in New England, talking about money is considered a faux pas in medicine. Most of the other parts of the country, it's okay, but up here it's not. And when we were going into my apology spiel for explaining to him how to make more money for his federally qualified health center, he said, Doug, let me stop. I got 4 words: no margin, no mission. If I can't make enough money to keep the doors open, I can't help people, and I don't care what medical specialty or field you're in. That's the way the business world works. So we want to be able to get that real-time feedback so we can implement strategies to improve clinical care and outcomes and get the most bonus money that you are legally and ethically allowed to get. That's the game, and that's what we're here to help our clients do. But in addition, we can work with pain management, addiction recovery folks, to combat kind of the public scrutiny that's been going on. It's not been a very fun place to be clinically over the last year or two. And while I think some of it is hyperbole, unfortunately, some of it is deserved. So we can prove that manual medicine and manipulative medicine does what it has proven to do clinically. We just got to make sure we have the body of evidence, and an amalgamation of data with tens of thousands to millions of data points from the different provider types that can do this will be hugely helpful. Next slide. So our goal here is to empirically demonstrate that we are efficacious in what we're doing, and where there isn't evidence-based medicine, we can create some form of evidence. It might not be category A or B evidence, but even category B and C evidence would be helpful for us as we're moving forward. And we can take those outcomes and share best practices with clinicians, but also with the clinicians who are running some of these insurance programs to say, hey, these are metrics you need to pay attention to. And that allows us to be international thought leaders. And we say international, even though this is a national and federal program, we say international because a lot of the manual medicine, a lot of the alternative medicine work that we're working with acupuncturists and collecting data there, that isn't being collected, it isn't being utilized. I think it's hysterical that in the Western medicine world, I mean, we wouldn't even really have a medical culture if we hadn't invented penicillin in the 40s, but we are now considered the world leaders, and really that's been, not even 100 years. And you look at Chinese medicine's been around for 5,000 years, and Western medicine tends to poo-poo what they're doing. I think we need to do a better job making that part of mainstream, because that too could be part of what we're trying to present. So we're really trying to collect the data on manual medicine, on some of these other metric components, so that we can gather body of literature that we can show to the payers, we can show to other providers, and we can hopefully not only help the reporting system work better, but positively affect patients' lives in the process. All right.
Great, thanks,
so
Doug.
You got the next piece here, Amanda, so go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. This is, so Doug's spoken about clinically what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, but also going back to your point, Doug, to your point of it's not about the money, but it's always about the money. So we hope that we're providing you with this balanced perspective of we do want to help you get these outcomes, get the empirical data, do what needs to be done, but we also like to show you when it's not about the money, but it's always about the money. If you don't participate in the program and you are seeing Medicare patients, so you're eligible for the program, right? Folks just kind of like to see what are some numbers here in terms of adjustments or losses under the new MIPS program by non-participation. So the downward 4% payment adjustment. You can do your own math, so you can take a look at around what you think, are going to be the allowable charges for Medicare in 2017. Look at last year, look at 2015, in the general ballpark, just to give you an idea, and just obviously, multiply that by your negative 4%. And look, it makes a difference. I know this isn't a ton of money, but look, if you're 4 providers, this could be a piece of equipment for your office, I mean, it depends on where you are, but why lose this money, especially when there's such easy ways to participate in the program this year anyway? The MIPS for beginner QCDR is really easy. I mean, you submit one measure and you're good to go. It's a one and done thing and you avoid the payment adjustment. But then you also get to participate in such a way that next year, there's already been initial data submitted for one of the measures. You can continue to build on that, be a part of the benchmark. So that's kind of improving those outcomes as well. By 2022, the adjustment is going to be a downward 9%. So it's not, you're not going to have the gift year of just participate by submitting one measure and avoid the adjustment. They're going to keep making the program more and more robust, and you're going to have to submit the 6 measures and et cetera. So just want to make you aware of that. And those of you that are on the call that are from larger groups, you can see these are big chunks of change. If you're doing 12 million, you're looking at close to $500,000 in 2019. And just want to make sure that everyone understands, and you can do this math again, like I said, take a look at what your charges were last year, take a look at what you think they're going to be this year, and multiply by your downward 4%. That's going to give you a roundabout figure of what you're looking at in terms of adjustment. But just so that everybody knows, because this gets confusing, whatever happens here in 2017, the actual 4% payment adjustment is imposed to you in 2019. So everything, not just the payment adjustments, but like I talked before about the QR/UR reports and how you're actually doing and all this other business, everything's about 1.5 to 2 years behind. with the government. Well, big surprise, right? So when you're submitting your data, the payment adjustment isn't going to incur until 2019 when you're submitting your data now with Patient 360. And also, likewise, similarly, you're not actually going to get your feedback reports and how you performed and everything. So that's one thing that hasn't changed that's still very frustrating to us, is that while they are trying to provide feedback earlier, supposedly, and whether they provide feedback earlier, the government, or not, at least you have our system and our tool to use, and which is based on their rules and policies and logic. So you can use our software to actually see how you're doing. However, the actual payment adjustment that gets incurred doesn't come until later, and that hasn't changed. This has been since the beginning of the PQRI program back in the day. It's always been a couple of years behind. So just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that delay. So let's go ahead and get started a little bit looking at submitting, how is the data submitted into into the portal, into the Patient 360 portal, and understanding and improving your quality and outcomes. So what happens when you're submitting data into the Patient 360 portal is that you're able to comprehend it, analyze it, and then synthesize it so that you can figure out what actually needs to be changed clinically during the reporting year. If there's certain measures that, for example, some people are coming in and saying, well, I want to put in more than what I'm required to. I want to use your tool, and let's say I only have to enter 6 quality measures to CMS, but let me report on 9 and just see like how I'm doing across the board for those 9 measures. And then we could submit the measures that you're performing the best on, but you can also look at why you're not performing well on some of the other measures and make those adjustments. So that's the whole purpose of having software and dashboard analytics in real time. So what we do with you first is we help you select the appropriate measures. So we'll look at those measures together, and we'll be looking at the QCDR measure with you to decide if any of those are a fit. If some of them are a fit, like we said before, you can mix and match. So some folks are like, I'm not in pain, I'm not a DO, we're doing gastro or whatnot. Then you would come with us as a regular registry, as a qualified registry, and we'd help you select measures under the quality payment program for that. If you're with us as a QCDR, we have our list of measures that we have created in collaboration with the Maine Osteopathic Association. And so we utilize those measures in a combination with other measures that are a match for these subspecialties, so for pain and pain management. And there's somewhere around 9 that we created, and then another 40 or so that we found that are relevant for you to be able to use under the QPP program. You can mix and match those. Or you can just select one of them and do the MIPS for Beginner QCDR program and just do one of our measures. So we help you with figuring out which measures are the best for you to select that make the most sense for your practice, and how many you should select depending on the pace that you want to participate and what you're looking to do with the measures. Are you looking to just submit data to learn how to make improvements for yourself, or are you participating fully in the program, meaning you want us to submit that data to CMS to avoid the payment adjustment? So we help you with that right from the get-go. We work with you to compile your data and get it submitted into our portal, and then we submit the data for you. Patient 360 submits the data for you on behalf of you to CMS, so you don't have to deal with their EIDM portal, which is a total nightmare. Not fun. We do all that for you. There's a lot more measures available when you're working with us. Like I said before on those initial slides, you're not going through the black holes of submission, so you have somewhere close to 300 registry measures that are available. We work with you to help enable your self-sufficiency, so to really understand this program and to be able to navigate pretty quickly and easily through the program. We have very helpful analytics and a useful dashboard. So once again, how do you submit the data? This year, whether you're submitting via QCDR mechanism or via our regular qualified registry, you can choose to do our beginner program, which is just do something. So you submit one measure and you avoid the payment adjustment. Or most other folks, what they're doing, because they've participated in the past with the program and they actually want to go for a bonus, and they also want to see how they're performing on other measures beyond just one, you're going to do the partial participation or the full participation. Partial is for at least 90 days, and then full is you want to go for as long as you can. So if you haven't started yet and you want to do full participation, go ahead and get started now. Once you enter into the Patient 360 portal, you'll create your profile, you'll begin reporting, you'll have your dashboard to look at and see how your providers are doing. You'll be able to see every measure that you've submitted and what you still have to do. So it will bullet point for you once you've submitted your measures. Okay, what do I still need to do? I have to do my consent agreement. I still need to submit another quality measure. Don't forget to do the IA category. So it's going to continue to prompt you as you move through the process and what you still need to do. Our exclusive measures, so these are important for you to take a look at, and we have these in PDF format, both the long and the short version, so you can actually look at the numerator and denominator specifications. These are our actual QCDR measures that have been submitted to CMS and approved by CMS. So if you utilize these measures and we submit them on your behalf, you will avoid the payment adjustment, but you can also look at what Doug was talking about in terms of improving your outcomes. And you can also develop measures with us. So we're working with a pain group right now that they're actually going to be utilizing measure 3 with us and submitting measure 3 for 2017. But we're talking to them next week. They have some measures that they want to co-create with us. And then in 2018, which the application will come up in about 3 or 4 months. So if you're interested in doing that with us, say, like, I like your measures and I want to submit your measures this year as a QCDR, but I also want to become a QCDR myself. You have to collaborate with another entity to become a QCDR, so you can't just submit on your own and be a QCDR. You have to actually collaborate with another entity. And so what you would do is you would work with us. We would collaborate and create the measure specifications with you together, and then we would submit to CMS. And then you would be a qualified QCDR, if approved, in 2018 for your measures, and that's what Doug was talking about before. As of right now, since no one on this call has co-created measures with us yet, we have co-created with the Maine Osteopathic Association. You would utilize these measures that are applicable, and we can help you select which ones are the most applicable. And like I said, you can either use a combination of these to add up to 6 along with other QPP measures, or you can just pick one of these measures and submit as a one and done to get your feet wet, understand how to do it, get some data submitted towards the benchmarking for next year, and then go ahead and submit these same measures with us next year upon approval. So that's just something to be aware of. And those of you that are on the call, we're going to make sure that we get to you after the call. We'll send you the PDF of the specifications of these measures so you can take a closer look at them. Once you've determined which measures that you're selecting and you're entering those into our portal, that's when you'll begin to add or upload the encounters for the measures, so the actual, the clinical action of what you've done. Did you meet the performance? Did you not meet the performance for that measure, for the numerator and for the denominator? And then eventually there's a spot in our portal where you'll click on Submit to CMS, and we scrub and review and make sure the data is all good and ready to go. You have the capability to click on that button at any point in time. However, CMS and their EIDM, so their portal, they start accepting data around January 1st. So that's when you would be looking at finishing up, wrapping things up in and around about January, because you've got all your reporting data in, submitting it to us, and then we'll get it submitted to CMS for you. We do things a lot earlier at Patient 360. We don't wait up until the very last minute. A lot of folks will often email me and say, but the CMS deadline isn't until March 31st. We understand, but our deadline is the end of February, so that we have time to work within the broken governmental system, right? Because the CMS portal is very slow. Imagine that there's thousands of registries and thousands of QCDRs and databases all across the country that wait until March 30th to submit data for everyone. You can only imagine already working with a government entity what that show looks like, and we don't want to be any part of that show. So we get all of your stuff for you. It's safe for you. It makes things easier for you. It keeps things clean for you. Everything's in for you by the end of February. So you have till the end of February to get your data into our portal, and then we get it into CMS for you. I wanted to open it up a little bit because we do have some time to answer some questions. I think folks may have additional questions about how data is submitted and what that looks like and what the process is like. So Tamara, I'm going to stop sharing at the moment just to see if any questions have come up in the chat box. And folks, if you do have questions, please type them into the chat box and Tamara can let us know. And in the meantime, Doug, is there anything else that you wanted to add about QCDR? And if there are no questions, I might zip over to our portal for a moment to give folks a look at how to log into that.
No, I'm good, Amanda. I thought you covered things well.
Great. Any questions so far, Tam?
I have 2 questions right now, and I'll start with, let's see. I'm wondering if you can still report a full year and go back and get your data based on the dates of service, or can you start right
Yep, you sure can. Now, it's a little bit more work to do that. So what I would say is if you're gonna, whoever the full year participant is, they wanna go back, you wanna start doing that now. Like, I would not wait to go back. We have had people do it, and it's doable. We've had people wait until, you know, October, and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna go back and dump all the data onto the templates and submit it. You can do that, but it just takes more work on your part because you need to know which measures that you've selected, and then you need to go back and be able to pull those encounters out of your system. So it is totally doable, and this program is still going to go on dates of service. So when CMS, because people are like, well, how do they know that I've participated for a whole year? Because the measures are still set up, the QPP measures are still set up in the same way. They have a numerator and they have a denominator. The denominator, part of the denominator requirements are entering what the date of service was for the encounter. And so they're going to, obviously, if you're submitting data from only July and afterward, they're going to know you didn't submit for the whole year because those dates of service there were no dates of service that occurred before July. But if you've got dates of service in there that are from January, February, March consistently, then that's fine. So yes, you can go back and pull the data, but it does take a little bit more time to do that. So I would suggest if you want to participate for the full year and get started, that you probably get started pretty quickly now so that you're not having to go back and retroactively pull a lot more data. Does that make sense? Are there any follow-up questions with that?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, Amanda, let me add one thing to that. I'm a classic procrastinator physician. That's just what we do. So it is a lot easier. And in the spirit of the program, we're supposed to be making these clinical identifying components so that we can change what it is we're doing on patients who we could be improving their care and saving the system money. You know, we had to wait until these metrics got approved, but we're doing group reporting at my office, so that's one of the reasons I'm not particularly on there. So we're reporting for a couple of our nurse practitioners because they'll be the easiest to report because some of our other providers didn't have enough data because of the types of specialties that they do that will make them as easy to report on. Therefore, the nurse practitioners will be easier for us to use, and the whole practice will live or die by those two nurse practitioners.
Yeah, that's a great point, Doug, to bring up with folks that are on this call that might not be familiar with group practice reporting. It used to be called GPRO, but they want registries to start calling it group practice reporting now. But it really is, if you have 2 or more providers under your TIN, there's no reason why you would not want to report as a group practice. It makes life so much easier on so many levels. And we have an actual questionnaire back and forth between us as a registry and CMS as to why it's so much easier. And we'll go ahead and make sure that we get everybody on this call a copy of that. It takes less time to do it, and it also helps if you don't have, if each provider in your organization, a lot of people will say to me, well, this provider hasn't seen that many Medicare patients, or, well, this one doesn't have the right measures. It doesn't matter because under the new MIPS program, if you're group practice reporting, it's based on the actual patients and which patients fit which measures. Not based on the actual providers within your organization. And they have also explained that it doesn't matter how many providers are in the organization. If there's 26 providers and you're reporting as a group and say only 2 of them had measures that were applicable, that is okay. And we actually have that in writing from CMS. It doesn't have to be a 50% threshold anymore of providers. It has to be a 50% threshold of patient encounters. So that is something to keep in mind as well. Tamara, there's some additional questions.
We do. So this one is a sort of a 3-pronged question, and it is, do you risk adjust? And I think that would be...
Yes, we do. For our QCDR measures, that's sort of, it's a mandate pretty much by CMS. And Doug can explain that a little bit more about the mechanics of it. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we, as a QCDR, CMS is kind of in the application for becoming a QCDR. That's part of what we actually have to do as a QCDR.
So the other piece of that is, when do PTs and OTs have to submit, and will claims reporting end, and if so, when?
So let me grab those pieces there, Amanda.
Sure thing.
Claims reporting probably isn't going to end anytime soon, and let me tell you why that is. It's a crapshoot when you do claims reporting. 50% of the claims reporting are successful or get penalized, whether you're feeling more or less cynical the day you want to talk about it. And the reason for that is when you're submitting the G codes to the government, there isn't any time for you to do an analytic to find out if you're being successful or not. But, you know, I will also say, being a physician, that doctors are cheap, and we don't like to spend money on things we don't have to. And when we're looking at this particular mechanism, you want to take into consideration how much money is on the line. Is it worth spending a few $100s to make sure that you're safe per provider? And there is an ROI that you need to do. What's your return on investment for doing that? PTs and OTs will not be required to report until 2018. But the importance of us working with those groups now, and the reason we're kind of trying to reach out to them now, is that we want to be able to be a steward for them. We want to create some metrics that make sense, and we want to be able to help prepare metrics for those organizations so that they're able to optimally report. Because if we thought it was challenging finding metrics for some of the other specialties, in looking them over, I only found a handful that we could potentially use, and some of them were a stretch. So we want to use the QCDR to be able to make metrics for people that don't have something that represent their specialties.
Great, thanks, Doug. Tamara, anything else up in the queue?
We've got some more. Let's see. So please clarify which specialties you include in the QCDR and which ones fall into regular registry.
Sure, and I'll actually show you that slide again. I'm going to pop up there for you because sometimes a visual helps to be able to see it again.
And that's not a mandate. I mean, there are lots of people that fall. Like I have some MD friends who do manipulative medicine, and I have DO friends who don't do any manipulative medicine. So it's really more about what your practice is about, and we're not eliminating the other specialties. We're just putting this particular group of folks under manual medicine because that's categorically how it is thought of from a traditional perspective. But anybody can report with us using those metrics depending upon what they want to do within their reporting options.
And folks, just so you know, I'm hoping that you can see the screen. Can you still see the screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So anybody that's interested in understanding more about our QCDR and what it does and how it works and viewing the measures can just pop right over here onto our website. And just wanted to show you the actual measures that we showed you on the slides. They're also listed here as well for you. So that will help give you an idea of whether or not these measures are actually applicable for you. And again, like I said, and like Doug was talking about, if they're not, you can also mix and match with any of these measures here, right? So you're not totally limited to just the 9 that we have. You can mix and match with these, right? So that's an option as well. And then for regular registry is we submit all of the MIPS measures. So it just depends on what your specialty is. And if you're looking for, this is a very helpful area. Let me pop over here to QPP website. They actually have, when you're looking at, I don't know if any of you have been here, but it's qpp.cms.gov. When you go to explore measures, you can actually do it by subspecialty. So if you pop over here for quality measures, it'll ask you, okay, what specialty measure set might I want to look at? And you can tick that off and it will tell you applicable measures. So obviously for physical medicine, they have some that they think are a good fit. In many cases, when you click on that, there's not as many. There's maybe about 15, but they're not all necessarily a fit. We do have these available. So obviously you can choose any of these. You can mix and match these with the 9 that we've created as well. So just want to make sure that everybody knows where to go. Any other questions on this, on the quality payment website, how to get there? Just want to make sure you can bookmark that.
And we're also creating a couple of ACI and IA measures as well this year. We don't know if they'll get approved, but we're submitting those as well. We
just submitted 2 for the ACI, and their deadline is June 30th. So knowing the government, we'll probably aren't going to find out for a couple of months after that, but we are in process. So that's another thing to think about when you're looking at the ACI measures, folks, as well, if you're reporting across all 3 categories. Tamara, additional questions?
Yes. Let's see. Do you have a way of electronically extracting data from EHRs, or do practices have to manually upload the data to you?
We are on a case-by-case basis with extraction. It really depends on, and we work with our software developers, it depends on the organization we're working with, which type of EMR they're on, whether or not they can produce HL7, CCDA file formats. Some EHRs actually produce QRDA3 file formats for their groups. So it's case by case, and we have actual specific, like a kickoff launch call about what EMR are you using, what system, what version, How are you collecting the data now? So it really depends. It's case by case. And the manual uploads that we showed you utilizing templates, those are our traditional methods. And then if folks that need to utilize EHR technology, we have to then get into a case-by-case discussion about which EMR is being utilized, which version, and we go from there.
In short, it can be done. It just depends upon how cooperative the vendor is in trying to make it happen. And sometimes it also has to do with how the EHR is populated with the data, because some of the EMR products have quality metric reporting, but they don't actually have quality metric reporting that is user-friendly. So we get panicked calls and emails literally the last week in December, the first week in January, going, holy crap, we thought we were covered, and now we're not. And so we will work with folks on a case-by-case basis, and it's usually we're able to do it, but it really depends upon the vendor and how we can work with them.
Thanks, Doug. Amanda, we do have another question.
Keep them coming.
All right. This says, I'm still a little confused about my facility reporting as a group. To check for MIPS with the NPI number, what NPI number would I use, or would I just put in one of the numbers with my provider NPI numbers?
That's a really good question. You would put the individual NPI numbers to see who is eligible. Group NPI numbers were not traditionally used, and in fact, it caused a lot of confusion because a lot of providers were reporting for some of the care that was provided with their group NPI as opposed to their individual NPI. And when you register to get a national provider identification number, you get both. So the individuals are how you're going to determine eligibility, but they'll all be under the group NPI when they're ultimately reported.
The group TIN, yeah. One thing I also want to add is if anybody in your TIN, let's say you have a group, your TIN has 5 providers in your TIN. At least if you're reporting as a group under one TIN, which you would want to because it's really easy to do that, if you're reporting as a group under one TIN and you have at least one provider, I don't know why it keeps doing that, at least one provider that is eligible for the MIPS program and eligible for payment adjustment, then you should report as the group and utilize that data, and that provider will avoid the payment adjustment, but it's under the individual NPI and then group TIN for the group. I don't know if that helps clarify more. I know it can be confusing.
Yeah, because it is a little confusing, but it's that unique combination of the individual NPI and the tax ID, the TIN. That is how Medicare tracks everybody. So we also had doctors who they might work in an ER, they might work in 2 or 3 practices. Mm-hmm. Each practice, each tax ID number with that unique individual NPI combination, that's how Medicare tracks that person. So the group reporting would simply mean that 2 of the people out of everybody under that tax ID number reported. If they were successful, great, everybody's successful. But if they fail, everybody fails in that practice.
And if to Doug's point, if you have somebody that has an NPI but works for 2 different places, so that means they have 2 different TINs, they're going to have their same individual NPI, but it's going to be a different NPI-TIN combination for 2 different places, they might avoid payment adjustment under one NPI-TIN because they did submit, but then we'll get people sometimes that will email us and say, how come I got a payment adjustment? And I'll say, well, do you have any other TINs that you work under? Because you only asked us to submit for this NPI-TIN organization that you're with. Oh, yeah, I work for something else part-time over here. And you know, that particular TIN didn't know that they needed to submit. So that's something to just keep in mind, that if you're working under multiple TINs, you want to pay attention to that as well.
Great. And I think that's about it right now for questions, Amanda.
Wonderful. Well, we are going to be sending everybody that's been on the call today follow-up of the measure specifications for QCDR. So we'll make sure that you have those in your hands at the end of this call, so you could see more closely what the measures look like. Obviously, they're on our website for the short list, but to see longer what those specs look like. And then we're also going to go ahead and send everybody more details on actually submitting as a group practice and why it's so much easier to do that if you have more than 2 providers. So that will be very helpful. And then just very quickly, I want to make sure that everyone's aware that when you're going to look at the QCDR program for the one and done, it's divided into two. So if you want to get started, there's a couple of different programs that you can look at. So there's the QCDR regular submission, which is really for folks that want to go for the full year and go at full pace. And then Tamara, there's the I want to just MIPS beginner as well. And MIPS beginner is getting started here. You just want to submit the one MIPS QCDR measure, so say one of our 9 measures that we've developed, or any one of the MIP measures that are available. Those are options as well. So let's just say that you've never done this before. It's looking a little daunting. You just want to get into it very simply. Submit the one measure, understand how you're doing, gauge your performance, and then get more heavily into it next year. Then we would suggest doing one of the beginner programs. So it depends on where you are and where your group is. If you're a larger group and you have done this before, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to go for bonus, because you only have to submit 6 quality measures. All the categories have been combined 3 into 1. So the ACI measures used to be meaningful use. If you were already doing that in the past, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to, because then there's a chance to get that bonus as well. So those are just a few reminders. So we'll make sure that we get you that information in terms of the actual measures themselves and more details on why it's so beautiful and simple to report as a group practice. And then I would also suggest taking a look at our blogs, the latest ones. This talks a little bit more about that black hole of reporting, why it's difficult to report via just EMR, because some folks think, I'm just going to use my EMR and I'm all set, I'm good to go. And like Doug said, you find out at the end of the year, oh my goodness, like they only have 3 of the measures that are actually applicable to me. So take a look at some of these, because they're good educational resources and tools. And again, this will really, really delve deeper for you into why it's so much easier to report as a group practice. So with that being said, I'm going to see if there's any other final questions, and then we're going to make sure that we get you all the information you need via email. Any other final follow-up questions?
You have answered all of them. Thanks so much, Amanda.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today at Patient 360, and we'll talk to you all soon.